Greetings to you all in the most precious name of our soon coming Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Thank you for tuning into this video where we are continuing to study the Gospel of Mark. In this video, we will look at chapter 5, verse 21 to 43. We already saw Jesus showing his authority over the forces of nature and over the demonic forces by calming the seas and healing the demon possessed person, respectively. In this passage, we are going to see Jesus showing his dominance over sicknesses and death. As he returns to the Jewish inhabited areas of the border of the Sea of Galilee, a huge crowd comes there to see him, and among the crowd was a man named Jairus, as we read in verse 22. Now, Jairus was one of the rulers of the synagogue there, and being the ruler of the synagogue, he presided over the affairs of the synagogue. He presided over the organizing and teaching elements of the synagogue. So he is desperate and shows his desperation by coming and falling at the feet of Jesus, asking him to lay his hands on his daughter who is at the point of death. And Jesus went with him. This event is recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Now, Matthew sequences the events like this in the following pattern. Jairus tells that his daughter has just died. Jesus goes with him. On the way, Jesus heals the woman who had a discharge of blood, and then Jesus goes to Jairus' home. Matthew and Luke, on the other hand, sequence it like this. Jairus tells that she is at the point of death. Jesus heals the woman on the way. And while he was speaking with the woman, messengers come from Jairus' home telling that Jairus' daughter has died. And then Jesus goes there and resurrects Jairus' daughter from the dead. Now, we need to understand a few things if we are wondering if this is a contradiction. We need to understand that Matthew is combining two things that is happening in Mark. Jairus coming and informing Jesus about the daughter's sickness and being at the point of death, and the messengers coming and informing about the death, actual death. So Matthew combines these two things into one statement. My daughter has just died. So this is what is happening in Matthew. Now, the other thing we need to understand is, from the place where Jesus healed the woman, Jesus leaves the crowds behind and leaves 9 out of the 12 disciples behind and goes to Jairus' home with Peter, James, and John. That's what we read in verse 37. He allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John. So Matthew, as I said, clubs two things that Mark recorded into one sentence. The sickness and the actual death are combined to say, my daughter has just died. And Matthew, all that he knows, now Matthew being the one who stayed behind on the way, the only thing that he knows is that his daughter has died. Jairus' daughter has died. So this is what we need to understand. Now, as always, a huge crowd followed Jesus, and among them was a woman about whom we have the following descriptions. She had a discharge of blood for 12 years. She suffered much under many physicians. She spent all that she had, and she grew worse. So let's analyze what's happening here. What is the situation of such a woman in the Jewish culture? Understand that Leviticus 15 verse 25 to 27 talks about the impact of such a sickness on the social life of a person. All the days of her discharge she shall be unclean, as though she is unclean on the day of her impurity. Every bed she uses is impure. Everything on which she sits is impure. Anyone who touches anything that she sits or touches or uses becomes unclean. And those people who become unclean become susceptible to die if they come in their uncleanness to the tabernacle. So, in summary, she is ceremonially unclean. Everything she uses is ceremonially unclean. Everything she sits on is ceremonially unclean. And she transfers her uncleanness to whoever is in contact with her. She cannot approach God's presence. We need to understand one thing here. This restriction in the Old Testament was given to remind people about God's holiness and man's sinfulness. It's reminding of how divine God is and how human man is. These things are not sinful in itself, they are normal in itself. Now, in this scene, she is among the crowds, which means that by her presence, she is making those crowd people unclean as well. Now, such a sickness, how it impacts physical aspects. Talmud, the Jewish Talmud says about treating such sicknesses. This is how the Jewish Talmud prescribed as a treatment: drinking wine with almond in it, having Persian onion, sudden shock treatment, and carrying an ostrich egg in the cloth. So this were the sort of treatments that people used in those days to deal with such health issues. Now, doing this kind of treatment could damage her physical health badly. Now, the impact on her financial status. By visiting several physicians, she spent all that she had making herself poor, and the worst part is that she had no improvement in her physical condition. At this point, we can understand that the only thing which she genuinely had was her unwavering faith, as we read in verse 28. This is what made her try to touch Jesus' garments even when there was a risk of making other people unclean. In verse 29, we read that she is healed. Now, Jesus knew that someone got healed by his power. He asked the crowd, "Who touched my garments?" This question was very specific. Jesus stops on the way and he will not move an inch forward without addressing who touched him. At this point, the woman was trembling. So we read about that in verse 33. The woman came in fear and trembling. Now, why is it that she is coming like this? She had a very high view about Jesus as she approached him. For her, Jesus was her healer who knew everything, who was capable of everything. Obviously, she saw the respect that Jairus gave him in verse 22 and 23. And she was fearful of being caught making other people unclean. So that's why she approached Jesus with utmost reverence and fear. Jesus made this situation like this so that she publicly testified of her problems and publicly expressed why she touched Jesus' garments, thereby expressing her faith. By doing so, Jesus correctly communicates to the crowd and to Jairus that approaching Jesus should be done and is done in faith. This is what pleases God. Through this, there were a few things that happened. Number one, all the uncleanness that resulted from this sickness, which prevented her from any participation in religious activities for 12 years, for long 12 years, have now gone away, and she is now clean in God's eyes. She has been loosed from an illness which made her financially and physically weak for the last 12 years. She will now have no fear of making others unclean. She now has peace with God and being restored by Jesus, as we read in verse 34. So, understand that Jesus is in control over all that's happening in this passage. He knows fully well that each minute that he spends talking with the woman and healing the woman makes it difficult for him to reach Jairus' daughter and heal her who is at the point of death. He knows that. He intentionally stands there and delays his arrival at Jairus' home. And while he stands there and still speaks, we read that messengers come from Jairus' home and tell him that Jairus' daughter is dead. Humanly speaking, all hopes come crashing onto the ground like this at this point of time. Jairus now has no hope. He hoped that Jesus would come to his home and heal her. But now that she has died, there is no hope for him. And this is where Jesus gives the same advice that he gave to the woman. He says to him, "Do not fear, only believe." Verse 36. From this point, the crowd is absent. 9 disciples are absent. So, as I said earlier, Matthew, being a part of the 9 who stayed back, knows that Jairus' daughter is dead. So, he starts off from that point. So, only Jairus, Peter, James, and John accompany Jesus to Jairus' home. And when they came to the house, they saw people weeping and wailing loudly. Now, we must understand one thing here. Since bodies decay in Palestine once a person is dead, professional mourners, that is, people who come and cry for money, they come to the funeral and quickly do their job for which they get their pay. So they cry and they get money. Jesus tells them that the child is sleeping. For him, resurrecting the child is as easy as waking someone from sleep. But here we find the mourners who were crying suddenly changing their emotion to laughter. They laughed at him. Now we see Jesus taking control over the situation, and he evacuated everyone from the home, and he commands them, the parents and the 3 disciples, to join him to the room where the child was. He commands the child to arise by catching hold of this child's hand, and she arose from the dead. So we read this phrase Talitha Kumi. This is an Aramaic word which Mark translates for his Greek and Roman audience to say, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." For Jairus, coming back from the dead was the least expected thing in this scenario. So I believe that Jesus intentionally delayed his coming to Jairus' home so that Jairus can get to experience Jesus at a much more powerful level. The woman who was sick for 12 years needed a remedy that didn't come for 12 years. Jairus' daughter would be dead in a few minutes, and raising her from the dead would be something that is a bigger impact than just physically healing her. So Jesus chooses to work in a way that one of them is healed after so long and the other one is raised from the dead, from where there is no hope for coming back from the dead. So Jairus is now aware that Jesus is more than capable of healing. Actually, he is much more than offering healing to a person. So this is why Jesus intentionally delayed his arrival at Jairus' home. He knows everything that's happening. And he knows why. And he delayed it so that Jairus can experience Jesus at a much more powerful level than what he wanted at that point of time. And now, towards the end of the passage, Jesus tells them, he charges them strictly that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. Now, let's understand this verse 43. Why did Jesus say this? I mean, let's imagine this. This girl who was brought alive, she will leave the house, and everyone who knew that she was dead would know that she was raised from the dead. And this can't be kept a secret for all time. So why is Jesus saying, don't say this to anyone? See, there are 2 things here. 1, Jesus doesn't want the crowds to follow him just for the sake of miracles. He wants them to follow him for who he is. 2nd, he doesn't want unnecessary publicity that would lead to a misunderstanding of what he came to do. Also, We must understand that this will be known sooner than later. So, this is why he tells the parents and the disciples not to tell this to anyone. Now, there are a few lessons that I would want to bring out from this passage. Number one, sicknesses and death are consequences of sin in the world. All the frailties that we have in our human bodies is a reminder that we are sinners by nature. This renders us unclean and makes us unworthy in God's sight. What Jesus accomplished in healing the woman was that she is now clean in God's presence. No longer is she regarded as unclean, and no longer does she have the social stigma that keeps her out of society. She is made worthy by the work of Jesus so that she is free from the physical, mental, and financial struggles. Second thing, even before Jesus performed the miracle, we need to see a very important occurrence here: her faith in Jesus. A sick person needs to know of the desperate situation that he or she is in and look to the one who can heal. So we see the same desperation happening in Jairus and in the woman. Here, the woman, realizes her helplessness and puts her faith on Jesus. So faith is a bridge by which she is cleansed and by which we are spiritually cleansed. Now, the other thing we need to know about faith is faith must be made public. It cannot be private. Jesus wanted the woman to publicly affirm what she did and why she did. And from that we understand that faith is not a private matter, it's a public matter. It impacts us publicly. Everyone should know it publicly. Third, along with faith is the right response to the deity of Jesus. One cannot be casual in the response and dealing with him. If someone needs a spiritual cleansing, they must acknowledge and treat Jesus with the reverential fear that God only deserves. Number 4, Jesus is the only one who is unaffected by our uncleanness. He is morally superior and ceremonially holy. That is what makes us clean with the requirement that God desires. Instead of us transferring our uncleanness to Him, He transfers His purity towards us. We understand this. Jesus is about ceremonial holiness. He is not rendered unclean by the woman who touched him, and Jesus will not be rendered unclean while he touches the dead body of Jairus' daughter. Rather than those things making him unclean, he gives them healing and life through him. So he is not affected by our uncleanness. Rather, we are given life and healing through him. Number 4, every delay of our request towards God is intentional, and we in that situation must realize that God is in perfect control of every situation. He will delay His work to specific requests in our life, and when He does so, it is for His glory that He does it. He chooses what to do and what not to do, when to do and how to do those things, and all of those things are for His glory. Sixth, this passage continues to demonstrate the fact that Jesus is powerful over nature, demons, sicknesses and death. He is powerful over all of the things equally. He is not a specialist in one area. He is powerful over every area of the universe because He is God. This is in contrast to the gods of the pagans and the gods of the Greco-Roman world and even today. So let's keep that in mind, that Jesus is not a God who is powerful over only one area in the universe. He is powerful over everything, both seen and unseen, visible and invisible, heavenly and earthly. All belong to Him and everything is under His control. The seventh thing, by raising Jairus' daughter, He gives a preview of what resurrection looks like, precisely what His own resurrection looks like. that resurrection which he would accomplish will be the final nail of Satan's coffin, so to speak. So, with that being said, we are done with chapter 5, and in our next video, we will start off with chapter 6. May God's name be glorified.